want you to hear this very clearly. A no to an idea is not a no to your value. I'll say that again. A no to an idea is not a no to your value. Sometimes it is timing. Sometimes it is bandwidth. Sometimes it's your manager style. And sometimes it's the organizational culture. You can take feedback seriously without making it personal. Hey friend, do you ever leave a meeting or read an email from your boss and think, wait, was that a yes or was that a no? Am I just overreacting? Or did they just shut down my idea in the nicest possible way? Or maybe you've heard things like, thank you so much for your enthusiasm. I don't have the capacity to look at this right now. Maybe we could revisit it in the future. And on the outside, you're smiling and saying, sure, no problem. But deep inside you, you're wondering, is that a soft no? Did I push so hard? Or am I just too much for this work culture? Or should I just stop bringing ideas altogether? Hey, if that sounds like you are so not alone. In this episode, we're going to talk about something a lot of ambitious professionals struggle with, especially newcomers, women, and people from high energy cultures. In this polite feedback, we're going to break it down. You would understand why managers sometimes say maybe later when they really mean no, or how to decode those polite, vague phrases so you're not overthinking for days. And most importantly, how to respond without shrinking yourself, dimming your light, or turning into a quiet version of you that doesn't even feel like you anymore. My name is Olajumoke, and you're listening to the Thrive Careers Podcast, the show that helps ambitious professionals build fulfilling careers without burning out or losing themselves in the process. All right, let's get into it. I'm sure if you're listening to this episode, you probably would have experienced this at one point in time or the other. And that's why I want to start on a very real note. I once shared an idea at work that I was genuinely excited about. You know, those ideas that you can see so clearly. You can see the value of it. You can see the impact. You kind of already see the end, like from the very beginning. So I took the time, I thought through it, I made my research, and I presented my idea. And the response I got was, thank you for your enthusiasm. I can't look into that right now because I don't have time to properly review it, but maybe in the future. The truth is, on paper, those kind of responses usually sound nice. They sound polite or even kind. They thanked me. They acknowledged my enthusiasm. They didn't say, this is terrible. But inside, I remember very well thinking, okay, is this a no? Did I overstep? Is my energy too much for this environment? Especially because this is not the first time I'm getting such a response. Is it that they don't see the value or they don't even see me? And for me, coming from a culture where feedback is a lot more direct, that was quite confusing. Where I come from, if something isn't going to happen, we say, no, not now. No, this won't work. We're not doing this. We're not going ahead with that. So when you move into a culture where everything is then, different and softened, it can start to feel like you're constantly trying to decode a secret language. And here's where it actually gets really dangerous. Because if you don't understand what's really happening, you can slide into two extremes. On one side, you keep pushing. You're bringing more ideas. You follow up too often. You start to feel like a nuisance, even though all you want is basically to add value. On the other hand, when you're faced with situations like this, you can also shrink. You stop sharing your ideas. You mute yourself in meetings. You tell yourself, let me just do my job, keep my head down, and, just let the day go. I'm here to tell you that neither of these two extremes is healthy. Trust me. Neither of them is why you came into this career or this country or whatever country that you're in the first instance. So today, I want to guide you through a third option, which I have found to be more effective. And that option is learning to read the room, understanding what's actually been said and what's not been said, and still showing up as your full, powerful, intentional self without having to shrink. So if you're just there and you're wondering to yourself, why is this topic even important? Why is all I talking about this topic? I want you to understand why polite feedback is such a thing in many workplaces. Because like I said earlier, in some cultures, feedback can be very direct. People just let you know what it is and you can exactly tell what their actions are just by the exact words they are using. Very direct, like this works, this doesn't work, change this, make adjustment here. Okay, we are not going ahead with that. That's more direct and clear. You know exactly what to do, right? There's not a lot of sugar coating. It can be blunt, but at least you know where you stand and you can take a move from there. However, in other cultures, people are socialized to avoid direct conflict. What do I mean? They've been trained to believe that a hard no can feel rude. A blunt, this isn't good, can feel harsh. So instead of using some of those direct phrases, no, we are not doing that, they say things like, interesting. Okay, you know what? Let's circle back. I don't have the capacity right now. Maybe we can revisit this in the future. Guess what? And let me make this very plain. Their intention is often not bad. They don't want to hurt your feelings and they may genuinely appreciate your initiative. But if you're ambitious, if you're maybe a newcomer like me, not used to that kind of environment, or if you come from a culture where people just say what they mean, black is black and white is white, that level of politeness can often feel like a maze. You might start asking yourself questions like, is it my idea? Is it me? Is it that I'm not a good fit? And before we even get too far, I want you to understand that there is another layer. Yeah. Sometimes most managers are under pressure. They are juggling deadlines. They are managing team issues. They have targets and even managing their own bosses. So they are a little stretched and they might be tired. So when you bring a new idea, even if it's a brilliant idea, what they sometimes hear is more work, even though your heart is saying more value. So there's a tension between your energy and their bandwidth. So, understanding these doesn't excuse poor communication, get me? But it does help to stop internalizing every maybe later as you are not good enough. It actually helps you to understand that, okay, there is a system here, there's a culture here. Let me learn how it works so that I can navigate it without losing myself. So, to bring this home further, let's do something a little bit fun today. Let's do what I call a mini workplace translation session. I'm going to share a few common phrases you might have heard at work, and we're going to talk about what they often mean behind the scenes. Now, of course, context matters. People are different, organizations are different, but these patterns show up a lot in so many workplaces. So, are you ready? Here we go. The first one is, let's park this for now. On the surface, it sounds open. It sounds like we'll come back to it at some later time. But in reality, most of the time, let's park this for now means this is not a priority and I don't plan to action it unless something really big changes. So if there's no follow-up date, if there's no action item, it's usually a very polite way of saying, let's let this go. Okay. So to the second point, when you hear phrases like, maybe not now, maybe in the future, this one is so gentle, maybe in the future. It leaves a tiny door open somewhere, someday. Often, what it really means is, I don't want to commit to this, but I also don't want to say no to your face. It's a way of avoiding the discomfort of saying we're not going ahead with this, especially to someone who is clearly excited. So you have to be able to read in between the lines and understand some of those phrases so that you're not overthinking things. So the third phrase that I would like to talk about is we don't have the capacity right now. Sometimes this is 100% true. The team is at its limit. There is no budget for it. Maybe the team is understaffed, or maybe there's just no time. Sometimes, though, it's a combination of all of these things. We are tired. This isn't our top priority. I don't want to take on something that might stretch us more. So even if this is a good idea, the timing and the bandwidth might just be off. Again, you need to read the room and understand what is clearly being said because it's not in your face. You have to be the one to decode all of this secret communication tips. And now to the fifth example. Let's circle back. And I think this one is very popular. Again, it sounds very hopeful, right? It sounds like something is going to happen. But here's the key. If there's no specific time attached, like let's circle back in Q2 to discuss this, or let's revisit this after the ongoing campaign, then let's circle back is often just goodbye, wearing a polite outfit. If there isn't a time frame, it's usually often a soft no. Now, I want you to hear me and hear me clearly. I am not saying every manager is out there to confuse you or that this is cast in stone. What I am saying is if you constantly feel confused by feedback, it might not be that you're overly sensitive. You might just simply be operating in a communication culture no one taught you how to read. And that's why we are doing this together right now. So you're learning some of those unspoken codes and how to decode them effectively. Now, you need to understand that decoding is only half the story. The real power is in how you respond. Because the goal isn't just to understand, okay, that was a no. The real goal is to respond in a way that one protects your energy, shows your emotional intelligence, and keeps your influence growing instead of shrinking. So let's talk about how to respond without shrinking yourself. The first thing you're allowed to do in situations like this, and I really mean this, is to ask for clarity. You're not at the mercy of vague feedback. You don't have to sit at your desk overthinking every sentence when a simple, respectful follow up could have cleared things up for you. So you could say something like, "Thank you so much for the feedback. Just so I'm clear, is this more of a not right now because of current priorities, or should I just take this as a no and focus my energy somewhere else?" That's calm. That's confidence. You're not begging. You're not arguing. You're simply asking so you can know how to manage your energy or how to even manage your time wisely. Another option you could use is, would it be helpful for me to put together a one-pager summary for you to look at when you have time? Or would you prefer that I pause this idea for now? Here's what this does. It acknowledges the reality that they are busy. It offers low effort way for them to move forward if they are interested. And it gives them the permission to say without you feeling rejected. This is what emotional intelligence looks like in action. The next thing you can also do is to shrink the idea into something lighter. A lot of resistance to ideas isn't just about the idea itself, it's about the size of the idea. So if your idea sounds like a full project, a full-on campaign, a full change, people might resist, not because it is bad, but because they are tired. So you can come back and say, I understand that this might feel a bit overwhelming, but to keep this very light, I could test it with just one client or 1 week, one small group, and then bring you a one-page summary of the results. You wouldn't need to do anything besides giving me a quick yes to test it out. Would that be workable? Does this sound like a plan for you? Now you've moved on from here is a massive thing that could change everything to here is a tiny low-risk experiment that I will carry on my shoulders. You're not only being enthusiastic, you're also being considerate of other people. Now, that changes how your suggestions land. But let's talk about the emotional side because I know this is where it hurts. What repeated polite no's or not nows do to your confidence can be very deep. if you keep hearing it over and over again. Because it's very easy for you to start building a story in your own mind that says, maybe I'm not good enough, maybe they don't believe in me, maybe I should stop raising my hand, maybe I'm too much. I want you to hear this very clearly. A no to an idea is not a no to your value. I'll say that again. A no to an idea is not a no to your value. Sometimes it is timing. Sometimes it is bandwidth. Sometimes it's your manager style. And sometimes it's the organizational culture. You can take feedback seriously without making it personal. The goal is not to become someone else. The goal is to become more strategic with how, when, and where you bring your brilliance. And I think that's where the magic happens. Now, let me also say this, especially if you're a newcomer or if you're from a high energy culture, there's absolutely nothing wrong with you because you care. And there's nothing wrong with you because you see possibilities that others don't see yet. And your passion is not a liability, it's actually an asset. But just like every asset, it needs to be managed with wisdom. So instead of constantly asking, how do I become less? I want you to start reframing that and start thinking along the lines of, how do I become clearer? How do I become more strategic? How do I align my ideas with what the organization actually values and needs right now? That's a very different question altogether. Another very important piece of this topic is being able to understand discernment. Understand when you should keep pushing, when you should push gently, or when you should actually let it go completely. Because not every idea has to live in that particular job, under that particular manager. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is quietly say to yourself, all right, this environment is not ready for this version of the idea or this version of me. And that's okay. And you don't necessarily need to bury the idea. It might just mean you have to use that idea maybe in your own personal business, turn it into a workshop. If you're a podcaster, you can turn it into a podcast episode. You can apply it in a different role down the line. So your ideas don't just expire just because one person doesn't have the capacity to process it at the moment. And your voice doesn't lose its value because one manager prefers things done a different way. You're allowed to treat every workplace and every interaction with different line managers as an opportunity to learn. So you should constantly ask yourself questions like, what am I learning about myself? What am I learning about how I communicate? How do I get my messages across? What am I learning about the kind of environment that I am? That way, even when you hear no and maybe not nows, you understand exactly where that fits and you know how to move on from there. So, lastly, let's just bring this home and let's bring it all together. The next time you hear something like, maybe later, let's park this for now, we don't have the capacity right now, thank you for your enthusiasm, I want you to remember three things. Number one, you're not crazy for finding it confusing. Polite feedback is genuinely hard to read, especially if you've come from a more direct culture or if you care deeply about the work that you do. It's not a character flaw to be confused by sentences that are designed to avoid conflicts. It's just human. You need to understand that. Number two, you are allowed to ask for clarity. One respectful question can save you weeks of overthinking. Number three, you do not have to shrink yourself to fit into a particular style of communication. You can learn the rules. Fantastic. You can lead the room and you can adjust your approach and still hold on to your ideas, your passion, and your identity. Guess what? You're not too much. You're simply learning to bring your brilliance into spaces that were not actually designed with your background in mind. They were not designed with your story, your kind of energy in mind. And that in itself is powerful. It takes courage to work that out. And that brings me to the end of this episode. And if this episode hit home for you, if you've been replaying conversations in your head and wondering, was this a no? Did I get it wrong? I want you to do two things. First, I want you to give yourself some grace. You are not behind. You are learning a new language, the language of polite feedback at work, and that takes time. So give yourself grace. Secondly, I'd love to hear from you. Take a screenshot of this episode, share it to your stories or on LinkedIn, and tag me with one phrase you now understand differently or one script you're going to try out this week. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, a quick rating or review really helps this message reach more people who need it. So, especially other newcomers and ambitious professionals trying to navigate some of these unspoken rules. Thank you so much for listening and for trusting me with your commute, your work, your kitchen time, wherever you're listening from. Remember, your ideas are valid, your voice is needed. And learning to decode polite feedback is not about dimming your lights. It's about redirecting it so it shines where it will actually create impact. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.
Welcome to the Thrive Careers Podcast, the show that helps you move your career confusion to career success, hosted by the extraordinary Olajumoke Fatoki. Each episode is packed with expert insights, real-life stories, and practical strategies to help you land your dream job, level up, and build a career you love. No more guesswork, just clear, actionable steps to help you thrive. If you're ready, let's jump right into it.